What's up, everybody? Welcome in to a winning edition. I know it's against the Raptors. If you would have told me before today if we won this game, I would have been like, I'd be happy. But, in just a normal Spurs fashion, the way this season has gone, Ethan, if it was like a tight, close win, I would still be happy and I'd be like, okay, this is good. We need this bounce back after the Brooklyn and the Orlando game. But after the way this game went, Ethan, not just with some of the insane stats that we're about to get into and historical performances that we just witnessed. And I know it's still the 19 and 33 Raptors, or now 19 and 34 Raptors, but still, with the nature of this game, Ethan, I really can't be mad about it. I know we want the Raptors to win and we want to get that other pick, but to be honest, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But with the moves they've made, that might be out of the question anyway. And we did lose to them earlier in the year. And when you consider that loss, Ethan, that we blew a 22-point lead, I think the guys, in combination with the Orlando and the Brooklyn games being ugly the past two, they wanted some get back tonight, and you could see the intensity from the jump.
Intensity, I think, is the key word for the entire game, and that's something that we carried through for 48 minutes, which is rare. So I understand what you're saying about, if we're going to win a game, you would have rather it not been against the Raptors, but because of the way we lost the first Raptors game, there's a little bit of extra, there's a reason this game feels pretty damn good, to say the least. And also, it would have felt worse to lose like a close, or to win a close game full of mistakes. But this was a blowout win in favor of the Spurs. From start to finish, it was just the Spurs with the advantage. So that makes it a little bit easier of a pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's just, I can't really come in here and be negative and
No,
be
yeah,
like,
me neither.
oh yeah, we dang it, we won this game. Like this was so refreshing. And this isn't what this team is going to be every night this year. But this is a glimpse into what this team is capable of in the future, Ethan.
Well said, my friend.
Alrighty, well, let's get into the box score before we get into the game flow, because tonight, Ethan, we have a Wemby triple-double with blocks. I'm just going to leave it there. Please tell me your thoughts.
It was a dominant performance. We see him get 20-plus points on a regular basis, and we've seen him get double-digit rebounds, but 10 blocks. And in the fashion that he did it, Jude, tonight was the night where we really saw, we see it every night, but tonight it just exploded off the screen. There's a reason this guy was regarded as the best prospect of all time, like behind LeBron James. Like his defensive impact, what he brings to that on that side of the court alone is so extremely profound, and threw the Raptors off all night long. They couldn't get anything inside. And I think it was the first time someone's done it since Clint Capella in 21, but they're totally different players. And then before that, it was Anthony Davis in 2018. I like the Anthony Davis comparison a little more than the Clint Capella one, Jude. But for someone at his age to already have gotten a triple-double with the 10 rebounds on efficient shooting and in a blowout win against a really solid defensive team, like on paper, like Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, that's a solid front court to do this against as well. It feels great, and it bodes well for his future.
Yeah, 27, 14, 5, 2, and 10. Like, if you would have, I would have thought that I wouldn't have been too surprised if you would have told me before the season, like, okay, I'm a time traveler and he's going to get close to a triple double with blocks. I'd be like, okay, with the wingspan, you know what? I can see it. But still, if you would have told me that he was going to get one, and in the fashion that he got it tonight, against Jakob Poeltl, really swatted him a couple of times. He missed 5 shots tonight. I think at least 3 of those have got to be Wemby blocks. And really the rest of the game, or the rest of the team, defensively as well, which we'll get into. But just to talk a little bit more about him, man, you saw him come out, in rhythm offensively, but the tone was really set right from the jump defensively as well. 2 for 4 from 3, efficient, 10 for 14 overall. We force-fed him the ball, but in an efficient way and in a smart way, Ethan. Like we weren't forcing turnovers. We were being patient. Sometimes we'd make an extra pass. Like there was one time where this was late in the game, but Jeremy was on the wing and he could have just tossed it up to Wemby, but instead he dished it to Keldon in the corner, and then Keldon had an easier
Mm-hmm.
dump to Wemby that led to a post up. So, I mean, this is one of his best games of the season. This is one of the team's best games of the season. And if this is what he's doing as a rookie, Ethan, I'm just shaking my head for those of you guys on podcast because I can't even begin to imagine what it's going to look like in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, the ceiling is unfathomable. And dare I say, our offensive approach, feeding him in the low block, like you alluded to, reminiscent of the 2013 2014 era Spurs with Tim Duncan. Like our player movement and our ball movement that always inevitably ended up with a low post up for Wemby. And when the Raptors did not send that double team immediately, they let him get into a flow. And he was making very crisp and correct passes out of the low block on the rare occasion they did send the double, but he was, as you said, able to get into a rhythm, and from that point forward, there was just no stopping him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing it a little bit in the comments. You know, people are talking about some other great defensive performances tonight. And just before we get into the game flow, because this was such a solid game for a lot of guys on the team, I think we can kind of go through them individually and then talk about the team overall in the game
Mhm.
flow. And I think really after we get through the third quarter, there won't be much to talk about anyways.
Mhm.
But Jeremy Sohan
Yep.
on Scotty Barnes tonight. I mean, you joked with me, Ethan. You said he unlocked some VC. He got the headband. He got both the knee sleeves, both the arm sleeves, and my man backed it up tonight. He had an efficient offensive performance as well. 7
Mhm.
for 12, 16 points, 2 blocks of his own. One of those was on Scotty when Scotty thought he was going to get an easy one on a couple pump fakes late. That was nasty. Had a steal, 6 boards as well, plus 13 in the box score. But let's go down to Scotty Barnes, Ethan. This was the man who killed us in the first game earlier in the season, had like 30 plus, forced overtime, took over, was talking smack. Dude was 3 for 15 tonight. He did
Mhm.
contribute in other ways. I got to give him credit there. And that's, a testament to the type of player that Scotty Barnes is. But offensively, that's where he killed us. Last game, that was the one thing. I know it was a little bit of a different team because of the moves that the Raptors have made, but still, he was the dude who killed us
Mhm.
earlier in the season. When I was out in Florida doing the remote broadcasts and we were just sitting there suffering, Ethan. So it is very good to see him get clamped down by Jeremy. And it's, just that's a matchup that you can't like ignore for Jeremy. Like you can't take away the credit. There's no, yes, you could say the Raptors played bad tonight overall, but that's really the only caveat. Like maybe Scotty Barnes' shot was a little bit off, but I really feel like most of that was due to Jeremy. Maybe I'm just wearing Spurs colored glasses, Ethan, but tell me what you thought.
I think absolutely you can give a lot of the credit to Jeremy. He was able to match Scotty's physicality. Sorry, my dog decided to sneeze. I don't actually know how he got in here. The door was supposed
He
to be closed.
invaded.
Yeah,
He
he
wanted to
really
hear
did.
about Wemby.
This is the mysterious dog that everyone always hears bark in the background. He's making his first on-camera appearance. Uh, but anyway, Jeremy was able to match Scotty Barnes' physicality, and that's really where Scotty his advantage comes from is being able to post up smaller, less physical like forwards and guards. But Jeremy was able to match that using his raw athleticism and stay patient. He knew that he could match his physicality, so he didn't need to jump at ball fakes or bite at certain pump fakes. So because of that, he was able to really minimize Scotty Barnes because he's not a great shooter. He's not going to score off the dribble. He's kind of like Keldon, but he's taller and stronger and maybe a little bit better of a post up scorer than Keldon Johnson. So you're able to match his size and physicality with Jeremy. It really eliminates him from the offense of game plan. And it's all elevated when the rest of the team was able to step up their defense as well. And force him into turnovers because he was having to make a lot of bad passes that our guys are able to take advantage of and take in transition.
Yeah, absolutely. The transition game tonight, the ball speed in the half court and the transition really stood out. I don't want to
Yep.
get too much into the game flow yet because I also want to talk about Devin Vassell. It took him a little time to get going, Ethan, but once he started hitting shots in that second quarter, man, he had a super efficient night, started 3 for 3 from 3, finished 5 for 7, had 6 assists tonight as well, quietly on top of a steal also, and 25 points. Vainstain earlier in the comments said Vassell carrying that scoring load too, very consistent for this past few games. That is something that we definitely need to harp on because I
Mm-hmm.
think Devin has had like 22 plus for a couple games in a row. I'll go pull up his box score or his game log here in a second. But what did you see from Devin out there tonight?
He was fantastic, and he had 0 points in the first quarter, ended up with 13 in the second quarter, which really got him going for the rest of the game. And when he's able to get started from three quickly, and start as hot as he did, I think he was 5 for 5 from downtown to start the game. It really unlocks the rest of his game and boosts his confidence level. So now he's doing exactly what the comments were saying. He's the first scoring option, really. Like Wemby, we're playing through Wemby, but Devin's getting a lot of those jump shots off of screens, getting to the cup, and obviously taking advantage from 3-point land. So when he is shooting as well as he did tonight, and really the past couple games, he makes our team a completely different team. It's not as so much just give the ball to Wemby and let him do what he does, but it's really a um, what am I looking for?
Co-tandem, you
A
could say.
co-tandem. We could just say tandem. It's a tandem rather than a solo show.
$1 million Whopper contest. I can top that.
Are you getting this?
I can top that.
Hey, you can top that.
You
I
bet.
can still hear it.
Okay, my bad.
There we
I
go.
don't.
Now it's not.
It on my freaking computer. It says it's muted, but ESPN just wants to glitch for me there. Sorry about
You're
that.
good. You're good. I kind of word vomited there. Basically, Devin played a great game. He was instrumental along the perimeter, opened things up for Wemby and the rest of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, Ethan. And that's huge because Wemby's not going to be able to do it all by himself long term whatsoever. And also the contract that we gave him before the season is huge too. Because with him playing like this is why we gave him that contract. And man, I mean, to have him, we talked about the 2-man game all year, but really just Devin's ability to play off the ball, like in any situation, is just, it's a seamless fit. And we got to mention that behind the back pass, man. Oh my gosh, dude. Wemby, even his jaws dropped there. That's a testament to how on fire we were tonight.
Wemby's reaction, I think, was all of our reactions. And Devin had 6 assists tonight, too. It honestly has been taking strides in that area all season long. It wasn't a strength to start the season. It's quickly becoming one.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to give credit to Trey Jones, a really solid game from him tonight. I've been noticing him fighting on the boards like I really have in the past couple games. Had 10 assists tonight, didn't force too much offensively. And then the last guy that I want to talk about, we really should talk about Blake Wesley too, because he had another solid showing, efficient. But I want to talk about Keldon. As much as it's only 12 points tonight, it honestly felt like more when he was out there. And maybe that was just because of the impact that he had fighting for boards. Ended up having 4 tonight, 3 steals tonight with another defensive turnover that he forced kind of in like it wasn't a jump ball, but kind of similar to that. And then he also had a block, 6 assists from him tonight as well. But I just really noticed him from the jump with his aggressiveness, looking for Wemby, a lot of hockey assists from Keldon tonight too. But the other thing, like I was mentioning, even though there was only 4 boards, he was out there being a physical presence, fighting for extra chances, and he was just a presence, even if somebody else ended up coming down with the rebound, he was a presence on the interior, whether he was driving to the basket, or going for defensive or offensive boards tonight. And that's why he's plus 27 tonight, despite his box score not being that crazy.
It's hard to describe exactly how impactful he was in tonight's game. Like, if you didn't watch it, you really should go back and just watch the Keldon Johnson highlight reel, because he was only 4 for 8 from the field and 0 for 2 from 3-point land. But that does not tell the story. You're right. The energy that he brought from the bench, usually our energy takes a dip when our starters rest and we bring Keldon in. That was not the case tonight. It rose, and we were able to have great defensive possessions that led to transition plays for him to get and one opportunities and really be that physical presence that you mentioned, Jude.
Yeah, absolutely. And just wanted to get to some comments here because we got a lot of y'all in here tonight before we get to the game flow. Robert Ball says, after Wemby had 9 blocks, why does any Raptor want to challenge him in the paint? I completely agree with that, especially after he got Scotty Barnes twice in a row right at the rim. Mr. Z, he's in here. He says, Devin is tough. Can't wait to see what he becomes. That's kind of what we were alluding to earlier. Vainstain says Sohan really is a very good lockdown defender. He clamped Barnes the whole game. That's what we were talking about earlier. And this is another one that I think this encapsulates this game and why we feel so good about it, Ethan. Gorilla says Wemby was obviously dominant, but we looked like a different team out there tonight. And I think that really sums it up really well.
Absolutely. And I think it all starts with the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to mention this just because it is unfortunately applicable to the Spurs season and their draft odds. Pat Fargit says Siakam, OG, and Schroeder traded. The Raptors will tank now. They did get some talent back, but it is some young talent. They're going to have to learn how to play together. And that's why, as much as this might have been the Spurs' best game of the season, that's why they got blown out by the Spurs tonight.
Even still, I expected the Raptors to win because they haven't been playing that bad since the trade deadline. I think they've gotten a couple wins, and RJ Barrett's been playing very well, and he's a known Spur killer. Same for Emmanuel Quickly. Suddenly always has good games against the Spurs. And they still have some quality players like Jakob Poeltl, Kelly Olynyk. Like Scotty Barnes, obviously, he's their all-star. You would expect them to win against the Spurs. So yes, chemistry is probably low. Yes, they're about to go through a rebuild, but I'm still proud of the Spurs for blowing them out. That's not what's supposed to happen tonight.
No, not at all. That's why kind of when I opened this up, Ethan, I was like, if this was just a close win, I don't think I'd still be happy, but I wouldn't be excited in the way that, we've been talking about it. But before we get to the game flow, Ethan, you may see something in the back of our in our backgrounds, I don't know, behind us. Y'all see the hats. And if you want to support the show, go over to sspn.myspreadshop.com. You can scan the QR code here. You can go to the link in the description or in our channel description if you want to support the show and get some gear like I have on right now. But let's get into the game flow, Ethan. You ready?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right. I'll dish it to you, my guy. I'm throwing you a lob like I'm Trey Jones and you're Wemby.
Malachi also had a lob tonight, not to jump
there you go.
The game, but first quarter, I think we started out with a 10-0 run. Toronto called a timeout, responded with an 8-0 run. What did the Spurs do after that, Jude? Another run. So it was really just a game of back and forth runs to start off. But we were able to get stops after that, and we were able to continually push the pace, which was key to success in this first quarter. We won at 34-26. I noted an aggressive Jeremy Sohan tonight, cutting to the basket, trying to finish with athleticism rather than finesse. That was a complaint of mine about Jeremy early in the season. He was trying too hard to finish with fancy finger rolls off the glass, and he was missing a lot of bunnies. I think he's taken a turn, and he even talked about it, that sometimes he forgets how athletic he really is. He's been finishing with a lot more force and aggression with dunks recently. And I think it's affected his confidence and allowing him to unlock the rest of his scoring ability. I wrote down again, continuing to give up runs. Both teams, we need to iron that out and tighten up the defense a little bit. And then, of course, Blake Wesley came in and immediately tried to baptize somebody with a poster. I'm not sure who it was. I think he missed the dunk. But overall, great energy, great start to the game. Really built up the theme for what we were expecting to come for the next three quarters.
Absolutely. This was the most competitive quarter of the game. We really started to take over after this with the 2 double-digit wins in the second and third quarter. But still, you could see the intensity and everything from the jump. I wrote down so much. I don't want to repeat necessarily all of what you said, but I'll just kind of read what I had written down. Like you mentioned, it was really a game of runs. It was like counter run after counter run after counter run early. But I'll just read from the start. The first thing I wrote down, we already talked about it. The first thing I noticed was Jeremy's gear change. I saw the headband. I saw the headband, at the very beginning. But then when they showed the full court, and I could see all of him because I just got a glimpse of his head. Then I saw the sleeves and the knees, and I was like, oh my gosh, my dude is decked out. And that's when you made the joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he spent some VC for sure.
Definitely. But I mean, it was a Wemby block and a 3 to start. I mean, that really did set the tone. I know that's happened a couple times in other games, but we had great offensive execution in transition and the half court in our first 3 possessions to go up 8-0. We had that transition trail. she's so happy about this, or he is.
Boy, believe it or not,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so well,
He
he's
is
pumped
Spurs
about the
dog. He's
Spurs.
silver and black.
There you go. He's pumped up. But like I said, great offensive execution in transition and the half court in those first 3 possessions. We had Wemby trailing after he had that block, and we hit that 3. And then we had a nice half court set where Trey hit the corner 3. And then on top of that, afterwards, we had the lob to Wemby. And that is when I can't remember his name for the head coach for the Raptors. It's something very European. But I did find out that he was a Spurs assistant that was hired by Sam Presti from 2004 to 2011. So another Spurs alum, another pop coaching tree in the NBA. So I got to give a shout out to him, even though I honestly don't know his name. But like I said, I know it's something
I
very
can't remember it either.
European.
It's weird.
I feel bad, but shout out to you, Raptors head coach. And that call forced him to call a quick timeout. Unfortunately, though, even though we ended up building it up to a 10-0 run after that timeout, immediately after we went up 10-0, the Raptors went on a 10-0 counter run, and I was like, oh my gosh, this feels very typical in the sense that there's been so many times this season, Ethan, that we've got out to a hot start and then a team calls a timeout and they come back and they take the lead. And then it's kind of like that flow of the game continues throughout the rest of the game. But after they did that, we went on another 8-0 run. That's why I was saying it kind of felt like counter run after counter run. And the thing that I wrote down right there were a lot of things I wrote down. We had great ball speed. We had solid ball pressure and intensity from everybody. Wemby was seeing vision. I wrote down early, I like Jeremy on Scotty. That played out for the rest of the game. But really, the defensive intensity was the root of our runs. At least, I wrote that down in the first quarter, but really that kind of continued throughout the game. And when you think about all of the things that the Spurs have said in like totality this year, Ethan, it really does come down to defense. Last year, obviously, we were the worst defensive team in the league. But and we've seen them talk about it throughout this season, but this was just an example of how we can run and how defense turns to offense, and especially with our play style and our youth, and what this team is like right now. That's having that ball pressure and defensive intensity, and hands in passing lanes, and just like they were trying. That's the thing. Like, even if the rotation, maybe it wasn't the right thing in scheme, because we don't know all the nitty gritty of that, Ethan, but there was always, everybody was trailing hard. You know what I mean? Everybody was rotating hard. There was a lot, just like I said, so much team defensive intensity. And I watched this interview with Keldon on the Spurs broadcast before the game, and he said that's the thing that they're really honing in on right now is team defense. And that's been a conversation you and I have had, kind of throughout the season too. And that really showed up tonight. I'm trying to think if there's any other. I mean, I had a lot of other stuff written down, but it's kind of, a very similar stuff. Blake almost got another poster on Kelly Olynyk. I think that's worth a mention. And really, what I wrote down is solid first, all things considered. We did give up some points. This is the most points we gave up in a quarter, all game. But like I said, even with that, it was with the way we were executing offensively and the way we were responding to their runs, I really didn't have too much else to ask.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that you just said at the very end there was the response to their run. We haven't seen that until really tonight, honestly. Like, we always give up that run after a timeout, but we never really come back to it, especially not in the same quarter. So that was big.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to dish it back to you, Ethan, for the second quarter.
Second quarter, absolute domination once again. 33-22 in favor of the Spurs. I loved the second unit plus Wemby that we played with for a little while. I don't know if we've really seen a lot of that. Usually I feel like it's the second unit plus Keldon and maybe Devin, but not necessarily Wemby. But Wemby got some run with them tonight, and it was great. It was high energy, high ball speed. Wemby was passing out of the post very well, being decisive, but also patient. We continued to feed Wemby low, and it was working. We discussed it earlier. He was able to pass out of double teams should they come, but they really didn't double him that much, which allowed him to kind of spin baseline, get easy dunks, easy layups. And I think he might have had another 3 in this quarter. I'm not sure if it was now or later, but Regardless, he was playing very well. He had a poster on our former Spur, Jakob Pertl. Felt really bad for Jakob. Jakob got his back on the other end. It was just a layup, but still, like he got back in transition and he was able to score for himself as well. But the Victor poster was incredible and brought more energy that we already had. It just kind of amplified it. Chetty Osman, who had a really solid game overall. Nothing crazy in the box score. He did have 2 steals, which is great, but he was able to chase someone down in transition where it would have been an easy Toronto dunk, and he basically just like slapped down at the ball, and it was out, I think, on Toronto, actually. I think it might have hit off his knee. Either way, it was a great energy.
I think
and
we ended
hustle
up
play.
getting a rebound, but I may be wrong there.
You could be right. Either way, the important thing is Chetty was hustling despite being up by 10 plus points. And really, that was a theme that we saw for the rest of the team for the rest of the game, which was high hustle from everybody's top to bottom, despite being up so much. Which, if anybody has been watching the other games this season, that has not been a theme that we have noticed before tonight. So I'm glad to see that. Swarming defense, forcing turnovers. Spurs have all the momentum right now, and Devin Vassell is getting hot. He had 10 points with a minute 20 left, was able to capitalize on a 2-for-1 opportunity, hit another 3, finished the quarter with 13 points overall, and kind of capped off a great run for the Spurs.
Yeah, absolutely. An 11-point quarter win. The first thing I had written down was KJ was being aggressive, creating shots for others by using his physicality. There was one missed Trey Jones 3. That was the other 3 that he missed. But if Trey's not, and maybe in a different lineup, we have a better shooter there. But if Keldon's not penetrating and drawing the attention he was, then we don't have a wide open shot. Then he did that later and did the same thing for Devin on a possession, one of the possessions, like not too long after that. So I was noticing that. And that's kind of why, like, when you were talking about how, it's kind of hard to describe his impact in this game because that's not something that shows up on the stat sheet, but he was doing that throughout the game. And that was giving other guys open looks, which is the type of stuff, when we talked about some of the early optimism that we had with him coming to the bench, that was what we were talking about, how he can kind of, create his own offense, draw attention. And that's not going to happen against everybody, but against a team like the Raptors, 19-35, someone that we're at least comparable with, that is the type of ability that he has. I don't know if this was to start the second, Ethan, but through 7 minutes, so through the first 5 minutes of the second quarter, the Raptors broadcast mentioned that we were on a 19-5 run. Now, I'm not sure if that was from the end of the first quarter, but I believe that was just to start the second quarter. Like I said, I could be wrong on that, but regardless, through the first 5 minutes of the second quarter, we were on a 19-5 run. Wemby had that poster on Yak. Devin had his first made shot at that 5-minute mark. It continued with him being 3 for 3 from 3 and having 13 by half, like you mentioned. That was huge to get him going. And here's the other thing, Ethan. I mean, we just shot the crap out of the ball tonight.
Yeah, we did.
Finished 52 or 53% if you want to round up, 52.9 technically. But we were at 64% with 2 minutes and 19 seconds left. I mean, so as much as, obviously there were a lot of other things in this game that I think helped that and got us really good shots. When you combine the intensity that we had with us just having one of our best shooting nights of the season, and you're playing at least comparable team, this is the type of result that you can get. So that was huge. And another thing that I really liked that I had written down, Toronto went on a little mini run to cut it to 14, and Pop called timeout immediately. I think we might have even texted about that. And he did that a couple times in this game because, as much as I really liked what I was seeing, Ethan, in the back of my head, I was like, we did blow a 22-point lead earlier. I know it was a different team, but we have blown a lead that we kind of have right now against these guys. And it felt like every time there was a little bit of a chance for them to creep back in, Pop called the timeout and addressed it, which has been different. That's something else that's different about this game in comparison to the rest of the season, in the sense that usually the other teams are calling the timeouts and making the adjustments to, regain their momentum. But we were able to do that tonight. And that was huge. Also, Scotty Barnes 0 for 5 in the first half. So once again, shout out to Sohan.
Shout out to Sohan is right.
Alrighty, Ethan, I am going to dish it to you for the third quarter, another 11-point win.
11-point win. Started off, and I got slightly worried for half a second because the Raptors went on a little bitty mini run, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. Third quarter disaster, just like we were accustomed to. However, Devin was able to keep us basically around a 10-point lead during that run single-handedly. And then our defense, led by Wemby's block party, which everyone's alluding to in the comments section, allowed us to get back into rhythm and push the lead even further. Led to a Devin Vassell to Julian Champagny lob in transition to kind of cap off that run to put us up 18 or 20, I think. It wasn't a dunk, it was a layup, but even still, it was pretty to watch. And it forced a Raptors timeout. Jeremy, another dunk. I think he had 4 at this point. Raptors are mega lost defensively. They don't know who to guard. We're getting wide open cuts to the basket where there's absolutely no help defender. Keldon Johnson, a bulldozer, was another comment that I wrote. I think he had another and one in this quarter, just throwing his body into whoever was defending him and getting contact, forcing the foul, and trying to put it up off the glass, doing what he does best to provide energy. I wrote Devin Vassell is going crazy. I don't even have a stat to go along with that. He was just going ham. And then Hustle, despite being up 30 points from everybody, diving for loose balls, getting extra possessions, trying to save balls going out of bounds. These are the things that we haven't seen prior to tonight. And then Victor Wembanyama's block from behind on Scotty Barnes when he thought he had a wide open two-handed slam. Insane. The Raptors fans went crazy because they thought it should have been a foul.
It was all ball, though.
It wasn't a foul. It was all ball. Yeah. I mean, this guy, we've talked about it at length. There's no need to go into it any further. But his defensive ability, Jude, where he's able to cover so much space with his wingspan and how he always goes for it. He's not afraid to get dunked on. That's crazy. And I'm extremely pleased with his defensive effort.
I had to pull this up because you were just talking about it. Victor Wembanyama in the comments.
Yeah, he's talking about his own points.
Right. Wemby had 91 fantasy points tonight. That is nuts. He says, putting that in perspective, only Luka, Joel, Giannis, and Jokic, so all MVP candidate caliber players, have had more.
That's insane.
Also, Victor says, all I want for Valentine's Day is a hug from Victor Wembanyama. Don't we all? Don't we all? You know, I got 2 friends. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was like, he could probably hug all of us with his wingspan.
That is true. You know, we could have a group hug. I got 2 friends who've shaken his hand, so their Valentine's Day is already made.
If only.
If only. All right, Ethan, I will give you my third quarter notes. So the quick 4-0 run, once again, Pop immediately calls timeout. I was thinking the same thing you were. And then right after that timeout, Scotty Barnes hits a 3 for his first basket. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please do not. Like I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do it. But giant Vassell answer. Devin hit a 3 immediately after that. And I wrote down, we looked much more jumbled and less connected offensively to start, but I think we had another timeout after that, or we just switched the gear at some point, because the next thing I have written down, Ethan, I don't think I was taking much notes after I wrote that down because I think I was so enthralled with what I was seeing on the screen. Because like I said, the next 2 notes I have are Victor owning Yak right now. Holy moly, we're taking over. Keldon and Devin cooking. Wemby, all caps, 9 blocks. I don't even know what to say. We just smacked them in all facets. That's what I had written down. But it just comes down to intensity, rotations, making smart plays. You know, I mean, intensity and execution, if you want to have 2 words.
Forcing turnovers and getting easy baskets. That's my summary that I'll put out there, Jude.
Yeah, the defensive performance from Wemby in the third was incredible. And then, like you mentioned, Keldon, I believe, had at least 2 and 1s tonight. And that was on top of the other, shots that he created with the 6 assists he had. So if you throw in his 6 assists, that's 24 points accounted for,
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go, KJ. Fourth quarter, I really don't have too much to write down here because the game was already over at this point. Yes, we technically lost by 5 points. That obviously has a lot to do with garbage time, and just the intensity was up a little bit here, but it wasn't up to the point of where we would literally let them back in like we did the last time against them. So I was, a little bit nervous at kind of like the 7-8 minute mark, but still, I didn't really think there was that much of a chance. All we had to do is at least keep pace, which we essentially did. The things I had written down, we had patience offensively, which was key to kind of keeping the pace and not making mistakes to give away the game and give up turnovers. We took care of business. The Wemby triple-double, obviously that block on Grady Dick made me so happy. Not because it was on Grady Dick, but because it was the 10th block to secure the triple-double. And the last thing I had written down was way to finish and stay dominant. We never let our foot off their neck, Ethan, which we did back in November.
Yep, I pretty much wrote the same things down. Finally, a game where we played 48 minutes with intensity. Malachi had a tough finish, just to mention him. He had an and one tough finish. Not a great efficiency game, 4 for 12 tonight, but did get 10 points, 3 assists, and overall played solid. I didn't really feel his inefficiency. I don't remember him taking 12 shots, to be honest with you.
That is weird. Yeah, I didn't feel like he went 4 for 12.
It's odd, but defensive activity and hands were crazy tonight. Really was able to get hands on ball.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I mean, it was a pause moment. I'm just glad you didn't catch me.
Oh. What I was going to say, though, about Malachi, I'm remembering it now. He had a couple misses in garbage time. He had 3. So if you take that out, then he's 4 for 9. You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Incredible Devin pass. We already mentioned it. And then the triple-double with the 10th block. I just wrote, thank you, Dick. Because he put up the most dumb, not even had a chance layup, falling to the ground, just threw it up to the rim, and Wemby just knocked it to the ground. Your dad was playing basketball with you, so appreciate your help,
Grady. Grady. Man, I don't have anything else to say, Ethan. I think that about wraps up the game flow, at least, man. This was just very nice, man. It was, as much as it was the Raptors. Here's the good news: we lost to them once. It could be worse. We could have swept them.
Yeah. And
this trade, to be honest, if we're being real here, the Pascal trade we probably knew was coming before the season. At least, I mean, it feels like he's been on the market forever. You know what I mean? And just with the team's build, it's really not that surprising. So maybe there's still a chance, you never know if they can go on some 10-game win streak or something, when they really get their chemistry down. I'm not betting on that whatsoever, but I also don't think it's completely out of the question for them to, maybe fall to 9. And I think also the lottery still has to play out, right? So even if they have the odds, there might still be a chance that we could end up getting that pick, even if they're, kind of in the 7 to, even if they get up to 6.
There's a solid chance we still get that pick, I think.
Yeah. I forget about the lottery.
Shoot, but we'll just have to wait and be patient.
All right. Just some other comments here before we leave. Robert Ball and SSPN OG says, remember this, Wemby is a 20-year-old rookie. Tremble, NBA. Tremble.
I think I'm going to rewatch these highlights, Jude, in the same way that I rewatched the highlights from our 2021 Spurs versus Phoenix Suns game, where Drew Eubanks got the start, and so did Luka Samanic, throwback to him, and we beat them by 30. I rewatched those highlights religiously because I really thought Luka and Drew, future front court.
But really, it was Barlow and Wemby.
Barlow and Wemby, yeah. We improved tremendously at that level.
Oh, okay, Ethan. I don't want to put a damper on this episode at all, and I don't even like bringing this up, but I want to talk about Zach.
Oh yeah.
I'll pull up the box score again, and I'll read some notes. I didn't even want to read them earlier because I just felt like they're not it just didn't really apply to the overall thing. And with the way the team played tonight, honestly, his performance didn't really matter, and he still made some good plays. But yeah, 2 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 6 points for him tonight. Missed his 3 that he took. He didn't, I will say, like, he played his role. He did not make any like super crucial mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But we had Barlow up there again. He was in street clothes, but I think there's a reason he's with the team right now. We'll continue to see how that plays out. Marcus Morris Sr. is technically a San Antonio Spur at the moment. The Spurs have until the end of this month to waive him. And then once that happens, I think we'll see. But as of right now, like with him being on the team, I feel like, and him traveling with us, they probably didn't want to use the 2-way day, but I don't know. It may not even matter moving forward. It just, all signs right now are really pointing to him getting a full standard contract. But also, with that being said, I wouldn't be like completely shocked if we didn't, just because I think that the G League, at least this season, is still going to have some positives for him. But really, like we mentioned in the last live we did, where we did his midseason breakdown, at this point, whenever we send him down to the G League, it's basically a guaranteed 20-10 or close to it. And with the strides that he's taken on the actual NBA team, it's hard to imagine that we're going to keep him down there that long. But I'll read my notes and then I'll get your thoughts. These are the notes I avoided because I didn't think, like I said, the team played overall well tonight, so it kind of negated all this stuff and it doesn't really matter in the whole context of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But when we immediately subbed him in, Ethan, there was a 6-0 run on interior buckets in the first quarter. All at the rim, 6-0. He fumbled a board that turned into a turnover. He didn't get back after getting beat off the dribble by Kelly Olynyk, where it's like, yes, I know you don't want to foul, but it was like the body language that we've been talking about. He was just like, gosh, I really just got crossed by Kelly Olynyk. Like, that's how it felt watching the game. And then, he just didn't even try to get back and contest. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like I said, you don't want to foul, but I'd at least like to see him like try to put a contest up, instead of just letting Kelly Olynyk walk and get a free layup. But with that being said, I also had nice things written down about Zach, because I was like, if I'm going to write down all these things about Zach, I got to point out the good things. He had a really nice block on Quickly. That was solid, stayed straight up defensively in the post. So I got to give him that. He beat Jakob for a board later in the game, which was nice to see. Both of them were going one-on-one, and he went up and got it. And let me see if I have anything else written down about him. I don't think I do. But as you can see, like, nothing crazy on the boards tonight. And this is kind of a bad game, like I said, to talk about this, but still, like, if there was 1.2, like, I think, where I just had the thought, I don't remember when this was in the game, but I was like, we've had a bunch of, it was when we had a bunch of stops, we were on a run, and then the first bucket scored to end that was on him. And it was like everybody else had really good, defensive intensity and rotations. He still there was another pass. I can't remember it. It was early in the game. It was to Jeremy, I believe, that was really solid. That was reminiscent of all the stuff that we fawned over at the end of last season and the optimism we had going into this year. But yeah, I mean, it's like you're kind of seeing my vibe here. I kind of feel bad bringing it up. And I feel like it's still overall, like, I've seen worse games from him this year. And I think in the context of the way the team was playing, he did play solid tonight. I don't think he played bad, but like I said, like you can't ignore the 6-0 run on the interior when he's subbed in immediately, and the kind of the lack of boards as well.
Yeah, I have no rebuttal to that. It's like you said, it's kind of a tough game to judge because of how dominant we were. And to be quite frank, I don't remember that many minutes. Like, I'm surprised he had 19. Like, I don't remember him being on the court even that often.
Which is a good thing, because you weren't noticing like things that he was messing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But to be fair as well, we were up by 20, so I wasn't really nitpicking at that point. And he had a couple nice baskets down low. I think he had a couple mismatched post ups. His hooks looked smooth. And I was like, all right, solid. Let's use that, build the confidence, and then try and come back in next game. But I don't know. It's getting hard. The rebounding thing and the defensive lapses are the things that are really hard to defend for Zach, especially when you do have Dom Barlow. And that's pretty much what he does best, is just rebound and play physical, high energy defense. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to criticize him because I do like him a lot, and at his best, he's really fantastic. Even this season, go back and watch the
Right.
Kings game where he had like 26 and 12 against Sabonis, and you're like, there he is. That's the guy. That's the guy Pop says is the starting center of the future. But this stretch has been difficult for him, and it hurts to
Yeah.
watch.
I'm still not out on him completely. But it's just stuff that unfortunately we got to talk about. And when you have the budding Dom Barlow, it's like you said. I mean, like we can go back to the Brooklyn game when he got benched last time, and Pop mentioned that Dom is very active, and that's why they wanted to give him those minutes with the foul trouble Zach was having. They wanted to reward Dom for the work that he puts in, and like he said, he was very active, which is exactly what you're describing. Active on the boards, active interior defensively, even offensively. We see him. I've mentioned the screen assists, a bunch. There's just all these little things that he does that they do want to reward him for, and that the coaching staff sees. But going back to the Brooklyn game last game, like Zach had one board in 7 minutes, and while Dom did play 12 minutes, which is 5 minutes more, if you take out those minutes, he still would have ended up having more points and more rebounds. He ended with 7 and 9. So, we can answer Robert's question here, but I think, unfortunately, that's just the evidence that we have to go off of right now, Ethan.
Well, tomorrow will be a great test for Zach. Or not tomorrow. Wednesday will be a great test for Zach because the Dallas Mavericks just got a lot bigger. I don't think Derek Lively's back yet, but Daniel Gafford has given us trouble in the past. He's a very athletic, big body who gets a lot of rebounds. And then, of course, PJ Washington at that 4 spot is very physical presence.
Yes.
Well, I think he's 6'7", 6'8". So it'll be a good test for him.
Yeah. And I see this in the comments. Robert says, does Barlow have enough size to be a starting center? Everybody else is kind of saying no. And I do agree with that. Like if we're just talking long term, but we're talking about Barlow right now. As a 20-year-old, we'll see how his frame develops, but also I think long term, when we go back, Ethan, and you look at some of the SSPN clips from last year when we're talking about Dom Barlow, what I said about him is I don't think it's anything crazy, but I think he has the potential to be a Spurs rotation player moving forward. And, if he can continue to extend his shooting, that is something that's consistently improved. I mentioned that in the last podcast we did, that in his interview with Jeff G. Spurs Zone, he said that shooting is kind of the thing that he's focusing on now. If he can continue to do that, continue to work on his lateral quickness as well, although that's already decently solid, maybe we can develop him into a 4 moving forward. But at the same time, I think if we do play him at the 5 moving forward, he'll be off the bench. But I think being undersized when you're off the bench it's a better situation to be in. I'm not going to say it fixes everything, but also at the same time, he has done a good job. He has been able at times to be straight up with people and stuff people who are bigger than him at the rim.
He could still grow. I think as a backup center, for now at least, he's got more than enough size because of his athleticism and high motor. Could he play the 4? Potentially. He's kind of has a similar frame, not a similar game, really. Maybe slightly to Jared Vanderbilt with the Lakers. Like Jared plays the 4. He's kind of a 6'8", big, strong body. Not a great shooter right now, but Jared Vanderbilt's a terrific defender, and his lateral quickness is, incredible as well. So if he can emulate that, maybe we can play him at the 4 spot. Who knows? His future, he's so raw, and he's still, was he 20 years old?
Yes, he's 20 years old.
He could still grow. Like, we really don't know what end product Dominic Barlow is because right now he's pretty much a blank canvas, and Coach Pop is just assembling his colors. So
I like this comment from DA Gaming. He says Dom can be a small version of mid-range Aldridge.
Imagine, but with good defense. No shade to my guy LA.
Right. And the other thing, what were you just saying? Oh, I mentioned this in the midseason breakdown we just did for Dom. Also, if y'all want to go check that out, I posted a bunch more of the bench. So we have a playlist that has our starters and the bench, all the rotation players. If you want to check out any of our midseason breakdowns and just want to, pick and choose whatever player you like, you can go check them out. But the thing that I mentioned about Barlow there is he just started like full-time playing basketball as a junior in high school. So when you mentioned him like a raw canvas, that Pop can mold how he wants to, or the Spurs development staff can, it applies to him even more because, he's not like a kid who grew up playing the AAU circuit, if you get what I'm saying.
I get it 100%. Yes, sir.
Look at this. I don't know if Mr. Chosen Nobody 97 is no that what do you think, Ethan? He says Joachim. I don't know if he's talking about Dom or somebody else, but what do you think of that?
If he's referring to Dom, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Joakim was...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I interrupted you, Ethan.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Joakim was 6'11", maybe if he grows, but 6'11" and just an unbelievable defender and paint, like rim protector. I don't see rim protector to that level for Dom Barlow. And Joakim had basically zero offensive game. So I still like my initial comparison, Jude, of Kevin Garnett. Baby big ticket.
Yes.
Little baby ticket.
I think that's a good one because Vanderbilt doesn't because Dom actually has like a mid-range game and he has a post-up game too. Like if you go watch the Austin tape, he was, remember, in the Showcase Cup, which is the first 12 games of the G League season. Dom was leading the G League in points per game. I believe he's still like top 5 at the moment. And that's why he's in the up next game. But yeah, I see what he's going for there, but then I thought about Joachim's jump shot and I was like, oh, never mind.
You mean the globe shot that he has?
Dom's got one, but this will be the last comment here, Ethan. Well, actually 2 more. One, I want to address this one. Victor has a prediction. He says Blake Wesley is earning a starting role soon. Mark my words. That will be very interesting. That will be very interesting to watch. I think long term, that potentially could be a thing, Ethan. Another only 20-year-old player here with a couple more years on his rookie deal. But last comment here. Robert Ball says Barlow or Bassey off the bench when Bassey comes back. Maybe, I was mentioning the 4, Ethan. They played together and started in Austin this year even. And both of them, I believe, had games where Bassey went off because he had a couple crazy games in the G League where he had like 28 and 12, similar to Barlow. And in those games, maybe it wasn't as big of a game for Barlow, but he'd have like 18 and 12. You know what I mean? So he can still be productive even next to a guy like Charles Bassey kind of in that scenario. So maybe that, kind of is the front court of the future. We will have to see what happens with Shetty Osman as well, because if we re-sign him, he's probably going to play the backup 4. But if we let him walk in free agency, maybe that's the plan because they played together. I forgot about that.
So you're telling me the bench unit next year is Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, Keldon Johnson, Dominic Barlow, Chuck Bass.
Potentially.
That's a physical lineup right there. That front court with Keldon, Dom, and Bassey. Ooh, that's a lot of energy and a lot of pounding down low.
And as much as pause, as much as Chuck is not a crazy shooter, he is still somebody who can knock it down from 3 if you leave him open, kind of similar to Dom. So I know that wouldn't be like the most crazy shooting front court, but it would also be a lineup of guys where everybody could at least, if they're left wide open, they have the ability to make it.
That's old school. That's an old school lineup. That's like 90s Knicks.
That's what Pop wants, right?
Yeah, that's what I want. I was watching Knicks Bulls last night just because I was bored from MJ's era. And they were getting after it. Talk about the biggest difference, Jude. Sorry to get on a weird tangent.
No, you're good.
The biggest difference, there was 0 high screen and rolls. Like you pretty much initiated the offense in the key, not even at the top of the key, in the key or in the wing. Like nobody ever stood along the perimeter unless your name was Steve Kerr or John Paxson. Like completely different completely different basketball. I don't know how we compare eras anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially the latter half of what you said. And I know we said we're done, but I gotta bring this up because this is a good point from DA Gaming. He says if Blake develops next year, then Trey should command the bench. He says Trey is too small to play starting, and that's something that when we go back to the Sohan experiment, one of the reasons I was using, hey, like I'm not too mad at this, is obviously we know how it went, and we've talked about that. But one of the reasons why I was like I said, I was for it is because I felt like Trey wasn't going to be able to keep up with like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a Tyrese Halliburton. The list goes on and on. Cade Cunningham, right? Those are all guys who are 6'5" and above, who can shoot the lights out and just unfortunately go to town on a guy like Trey. And I know that Trey on the bench, it was tough at the beginning of this year. And you might be a little bit wary of that reversion, but I think with the chemistry of everybody else, and also he'd have Keldon as well. I don't think we really saw that with him on the bench with Keldon. That might make he may play a little bit better, but more importantly, Ethan, and I don't mean to cut you off there. The defensive upside as well as really the offensive upside that we've been seeing a little bit from Blake as well. But mainly the defensive upside. Like you can argue Blake's already a better isolation defender than Trey. He's more exactly. He's at least more talented. So I get DA Gaming's point there, and that kind of goes to Victor's comment earlier.
Everyone knows my opinion on Blake Wesley. I won't get into it. I think he's quite possibly the best thing to ever happen to basketball. Anyway, what I was going to say was when you say we haven't seen Trey and Keldon, I was going to say and Dom, like that's going to open up everybody's game having Dom out there with him. But it's also it could prove to be a moot point should we be able to draft another point guard with our possibly top 5 pick, depending on where the standings end up. So,
yeah, that's another really, really good point. It's going to be interesting to see how the draft plays out. We'll see if we end up getting that Raptors pick, if we can get some more lottery luck. But even if we don't, depending on where we end up falling, because I'm not going to bet on us winning 2 lotteries in a row, even if we end up having the top 3 odds. So that tells me that, there's going to be some guys off the boards that might force our hand on a decision. And the Spurs, they're going to pick best player available. You know what I mean? Regardless of position.
For sure. Absolutely.
Alrighty, y'all. We appreciate you hanging out with us on this very nice post game. This was refreshing. We went for almost an hour on this one because of how nice it was to watch this game and all the little things that we saw within it. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button below. If you want to stay updated with the channel, follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Go